glands. So let's talk about the things that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the alimentary canal, and we're going to talk about digestive glands. We're going to also talk about the digestive physiology, because we also need to know what happens in there, in your gut and the other organs. And we're going to talk about the nutrition, the impact of food, and that's going to be all of it. Nothing more, nothing less. So this session will be around more than 2 hours, or maybe less than that, but it will be more than an hour. So if you're not feeling well, or if you're trying to do something else, I hope you finish all your work and sit back to study, so that we can focus on our studies and get better result in our examinations. So this is the alimentary canal. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the alimentary canal. You can write down the notes if you want to from this video, because I'm gonna try to make it as notely as possible, and that may be enough for your examinations. And I'm gonna also to um, write the important in some other colors and make it more wonderful for you. So get ready. So alimentary canal is the part where digestion occurs, and there are a lot of different parts of alimentary canal: your mouth, your stomach, your intestines, your anus, everything this lies in your alimentary canal. But when we're going through the order, let's talk about the alimentary canal and its organs. So the first one is your mouth, from where your food enters. So we call it the mouth, or the buccal cavity. And the second one, that is your pharynx, which is also known as your food pipe. And then we have esophagus, which is actually known as your food pipe. This is a common passage. Pharynx is a common passage for both food and air. So after pharynx, if you're going to talk about the respiratory system, we're going to have larynx. But after, in your digestive system, we're going to talk about the esophagus. And now we have the stomach, and then we have intestines, the smaller one, which is a little bit longer than the larger intestine. And we have the large intestine, and we have the anus. So this is the excretory part, or the disposing part. But anus lies in your digestive system and not in your excretory system, because excretory system is about the excretion of urea and other wastages, whereas this is about the excretion of the undigested food. So while in this session we're gonna have some of the problems, which is like the zooming in and the zooming out. This is going to happen a lot, so sometimes you may need to pause while looking at this video, but I'm gonna do it as at least as possible. So now let's talk about our mouth, which was the first organ of our... So mouth is the most initial organ of digestion and the initial organ of your alimentary canal. So mouth is like, when we draw a mouth, what we see is, we see the lips, and organs, we see the teeth, and we have a lot of things in there. So just write it down, whatever you know. We see the tongue, we see our gums, and we see our palates, which are the hard palate and the soft palate. So here, let's write the hard palate. And we see our tonsil, tonsils and something hanging out there which is known as uvula. So that's it. We see all these things out there in our mouth. So the human mouth is bounded by true muscular lips, and which are both movable. There's both of the lips are movable. Let's try to draw a diagram of mouth. I'm not really nice at drawing, but I'm gonna try my best. So you also should try your best, because diagrams help a lot while studying, you know. So this portion, okay, well, we're gonna talk about this later on. Firstly, I'm gonna make the lips. So yeah, be precise while drawing, because for me it's really easy while drawing because I can erase it right with the tap of my two fingers. But for you who may be drawing, most of you who may be drawing in your, you know, we don't really know how hard it is. So I'm gonna try to make these teeth a little bit larger. And so we can make some of the teeth here. And now we have the teeth out here. Now the larger one. Okay, try to, you know, like, don't count the numbers and all. And we have some, like, something, a hanging structure out here in our mouth, which is known as the uvula. Hanging muscular structure, which is known as the uvula. So if possible, like, I'm just trying to give you some idea of the diagram, but this is not going to be the best one. And we have the tongue, you know, like, just try to make it. And we have the tonsils out here. So that's all. So this is our lip, this is the tooth, we have the tongue, and we also have our tonsils and the uvula and all, right? So these are the gums, and the upper structure is the soft palate. So just look at the roof of your mouth. You have a harder structure in the frontal part, harder bones. That's your hard palate. We're gonna talk about, you know, like, the hard palate that we really talked about in the beginning. That's the initial part of your roof of your mouth. And if you go a little behind, you can touch it with your fingers if they are clean. You find a little softer area, which is the soft palate. And so that's all. So now, so, you know, like, we have this depression in your lips. Everyone has this. This is known as a philtrum. Spelling is philtrum, philtrum. And okay, let's write it down in the note. The depression of upper lip is called philtrum. Okay, let's change the color for this. Okay, let's make it red. And this is generally found in humans and not in every animal. But in humans we call it philtrum. And we have this vermilion. Okay, let's try to make this a little more like vermilion color. We have this vermilion color in the border of our lip. So vermilion border of the lip is found in the cases of human. And if you want to know, like in amphibians like frogs and toads, the lips they are absent. Now let's talk about, we talked about the mouth. Now let's talk about some of the parts of our mouth, like how many parts does it consist of. Generally, in generalization, human mouth is divided in two parts. The first part is the vestibule. So let's talk about the vestibule first. So this is the first part, vestibule. So vestibule, or some people call it the vestibule. So this is the space between your lips and gums in front and the gums and cheeks on the side. So lips and the gums in the front, like it's the hollow space in the front, and gums and cheeks on the side. That it is. The thing about this is it's the hollow space. Generally regard this as a hollow space and nothing more. And now we talk about the buccal cavity. So we have this word called buccal cavity, which also represents the hollow space, but this is like buccal cavity is a big cavity, but vestibule, it's the space in between your lips and gums. You have the lips and you have the gums, and the space between them is known as the vestibule. And you have the cheeks and you have the gums, and space between them, that's also called the vestibule. So but the buccal cavity is the inner portion of your mouth. It's the inner portion of it which is lined by, so let's write about this a little bit. Inner portion of the mouth and lined by non-keratinized. It shouldn't be keratinized, or else it will be harder. So non-keratinized, stratified, squamous. This is also squamous. Epithelium. And it contains the, like the 3 pairs of tonsils that we talked about, and the tongue, and it also comprises of the teeth. So cavity is not only cavity, we also have the teeth and the tongue and the tonsils out there. And like I said, the palate in the beginning, it's the roof of the buccal cavity. Roof of the buccal cavity. You're gonna get a little more like you're gonna get a little more touch of this thing if you start to start to touch your palate. You go in the mirror and see your mouth, and you're gonna know that you have the uvula which is hanging, and maybe, I don't know if you can see the tonsil, but if you try it really hard you can see them. And take a photo, ask someone to take a photo and all. So we have 2 types of palate, which is the hard palate, and we have this soft palate. And the hard palate is the anterior part of the palate, anterior part of the roof of the buccal cavity. And we have soft palate, which is not the anterior part, it's rather the posterior part. Posterior part. And this uvula hangs from the soft palate. It's a hanging structure out from the soft palate. And this is also called, uvula is also called velum palatine. And this has a function, or it has a thing called, this moves forward while swallowing, and this has a particular function, which is to close off the nasopharynx. So we're going to talk about the pharynx in one of our respiratory videos, most probably. And this prevents the food and prevents the food from entering the nasal cavity, So when we talk about the hard palate, I didn't mention a lot about the hard palate, but hard palate, this is made up of, the nasal palatine, or maybe let's call the maxilla and palatine bone. So that's it. Nothing much to talk about. Nothing hangs from there. And that's it. The soft palate. Now let's talk about, now let's try to move on to the tonsils, which is generally inflamed. So first of all, let me write this thing. So whenever you go to your doctor, and some of the doctors, they say, like in our country, they say, oh, there's a tonsil, and a tonsil is there. Tonsil, everyone has a tonsil. So tonsil is an organ, and it's not a disease. It's an organ, but what the problem is the inflammation that occurs in it. Inflammation of tonsil is the problem, and generally the doctor prescribes us medicine not because we have a tonsil. A doctor does not give us medicine for eye because we have an eye. The doctor gives us a medicine because, or prescribes us a medicine because we have a malfunctioning eye, or maybe not so good in condition eye, or the problem. And similar case is for the tonsil. We have a tonsil, everyone has it. It's a functional organ, but it's one of the lymphocytic organ, lymphatic organ, let's say lymphatic organs. So this is an important immune organ. And inflammation of tonsil is the problem, and it is called, let's write with something new color. So tonsillitis, itis. When we put itis, it generally reminds us of the itis is the inflammation of any organ most of the times. And so these are lymphoid in nature. Or rather, they don't have much role to play in your digestion. Now we can move on to the teeth, which is one of the important, we're going to talk a lot about this thing. So now, since we have moved on from mouth to the buccal cavity and all, now let's study a little about the teeth. So the teeth is the digestive organ. So let's talk a little about this. So study of teeth is called, most of you knew this word like dentistry, okay? But what we also say is odontology, and some places you can see orthodontics. And this is ectomesodermal in origin, because enamel, that is one of the hardest substance in the human body, enamel is ectodermal in origin. And the another thing which is inside is the dentine. Let's say the rest of the teeth is mesodermal in origin. So two origin, right? So you mean human teeth, upper jaw are attached to the maxilla bone, the upper jaw. This is attached to the maxilla bone, and the lower jaw of the teeth is attached to, let's talk about the lower jaw, which is attached to the mandible. If you have studied about bones in human body, these are the facial bones: mandible and maxilla, upper maxilla, lower mandible, a lot of things, right? So, and one of the features of the human teeth is we have different kinds of teeth. And let's talk about them. So we are referred as the heterodonts. Homo means same kind of teeth. Hetero means different kinds of teeth, which means like we have teeth, but we have different kinds of teeth. We don't have the similar kinds of teeth. And our teeth are embedded in the theca, or they have the roots. So we also have the thecodont. Our teeth are also thecodontic teeth. And the another thing is we developed two sets of teeth in our lifetime. Developed two sets in lifetime. So we are these kinds of teeth are referred as diphyodont. And well, I would like to say, now let's talk about the types of teeth. Because we are heterodontic, we have different kinds of teeth. So we have four types of teeth. And they are the first set, which are the incisors. The second one is the canine, which is the non-functional, and we have the premolars, and then we have the molars. So these are the four types of teeth. And since our younger days, we have always studied that human beings have 20 teeth in child and 32 teeth in adult, and that's true because that is what it is. So in case of adult, we have 4 incisors, and I'm talking about the upper jaw. So let's talk about the upper jaw. we have 4 incisors, and we have one, well, yeah, let's say two canines, and we have the 4 premolars, and we have 6 molars. So if we talk about the only upper jaw, we have total of 4 plus 2 total, okay? Total, okay, this is a little not so good. We have total of 4 plus 2 plus 4 plus 6, which is equal to 16 teeth. And we have the similar numbers in the lower jaw, which is the 16 teeth, and that makes it equal to 32 teeth in, well, teeth not, it is just teeth in both the jaws. Now let's talk a little about the incisors. And incisors, these are, when we talk about the shape, these are the chisel shape. So chisel is this shape. Generally chisel is referred as a little triangular shape, okay? So chisel shape, you can Google chisel and look at it, with sharp and cutting edges, because it's a little, its function is to cut, and 4 in each jaws, and this has only one root. We're going to talk about the roots after in the every one of them. So now let's talk about the canines, and the canines are the carnivoric. Let's talk about the carnivorous teeth, because generally when we refer to dogs we call them the canines, okay? So that's the reason. So carnivorous teeth, and this also has one root, and this is canine is vestigial in human beings. Vestigial in human beings, has nothing to do with us. We don't need them. And now let's talk about the premolars. So we have 4 premolars in one jaw, and premolars have, you know, like the thing with premolars is premolars have 2 roots. Premolars have 2 to 3 roots, and generally that's like in the upper jaw they have 3 roots, whereas in the lower jaw they have only 2 roots. So 2 or 3 roots depending on the jaw. And we have molars, which are 6 molars in one jaw, and that's more like they have 3 roots and depends, and are developed at last. Now now let's talk a little about the teeth. I hope this note is getting fine to you. Now let's talk about the structure of a tooth. So when we're talking about the structure, we have this thing called the crown, and okay, well, I think I'll make it a little smaller, but you will be able to understand the diagram because I'm gonna make it understandable. So this is the okay, so now let's try to draw this a little better so that everyone understands. And like, you know, we have this crazy diagram which I'm referring to. I'm also looking at something in drawing. So this area is called the crown, the whitish area, and the upper part of the crown is the enamel. And this area where the crown leaves, and we have the gum out there, and we have this cement. Okay, well, we have this form of structure out there waiting for us inside our teeth. So let's try to make it something lookable, maybe. That is what I would say. Okay, now I've taken the reference, so I think I can draw it now. So we have the cement out here also, and oh yeah, so we have these nerves out there, you know, like a lot of nerves out there, and the blood vessels. And the inside of this is called the pulp cavity. And we have this inner structure, this one, right? This largely spread. This is the dentine, and the crown. And the crown is the which part you see, right? So that's it, nothing more. The exposed area, crown is the exposed area, and pulp cavity, it's inside. Really sensitive, and dentine lower than inside the enamel. Yeah, so that's it, nothing much. So that much for today, guys. We're gonna talk about the dental formula in our another video, and we're gonna talk about the tongue, a little about pharynx, and histology of the GI tract, maybe in another video. And yeah, that's it.